me. I've been thinking about spiritual journey and spirit and what that might be as opposed to my life journey. Of course, it's all intertwined. But I'm thinking about how spirit has opened to me when I knew it was spirit. And so I was born in DC. My dad was born in DC, kind of generational. That's not very common in DC. And then I grew up in Rockville my entire life. I'm the 10th of 12 children, the youngest girl, but I have 2 younger brothers. So it was always a busy household from the moment I came into it. That's how I grew up. My parents actually separated and eventually divorced. And that was a good thing because there was trauma in the household. And it was best not to have that continued. As a child, that was difficult, but as I got older, I could see the wisdom of that separation and the care that provided, actually. So my mom was very busy. We were raised Catholic, and I went to Catholic school for a few years in elementary school. And I felt kind of steeped in it, although the shame of a divorce was quite heavy then in those times. So I'm not sure we were accepted into it as much as we participated in it. And my mom I was thinking about my mom praying. I don't know that everybody would say that she was a very spiritual person, but when she would pray, when she would go to church, she would pray very deeply. She was very focused. And I think she had a lot to pray about. So I had that example, if you will. And I think of my mom as maybe my first guide in spirituality, even though, as I said, I'm not sure everybody would recognize that she was a deeply spiritual person. And I think a lot of that had to do with, she was forever telling us to get outside, but in a very positive way. She wanted us to be in nature and in the woods and on the beach and swimming, even if there were sea nettles in the bay. And she always, had a feather put in her hair when we were at the beach. So I have a feather clip in my hair today. And so that's always been a place where I find myself centered and feeling one with the universe is in nature. And that makes sense, of course, because it is. And so when I got to be a little older and we were experiencing a lot of social issues in our household, and maybe that's not too surprising, but it was, we were quite poor. We didn't really have a lot of money, and money would run out before the end of the month, and we'd eat eggs for 3 days or something. So, but we always stuck together, and that was from both of our parents, that we were to take care of each other. And the 12 of us were born within 16 years, very close in age and very different people, but very close together. And as I was becoming a teenager, I felt that I had a calling. And the only calling I knew about at that time was a nun. So I thought, oh, maybe I'm supposed to be a nun, although it didn't feel quite right, but I was like, but I have this calling, so it must be that. And I realized that wasn't quite right. And when I was 18, another guide, a brother-in-law, Dave, had he studied a lot of philosophy. I don't think he went to college or anything. I don't even know if he graduated high school, but he was like this philosophical guy. And so he and many of my family and many people I knew in my vicinity were doing a course called LifeSpring, which was very much like EST, on the human potential movement. And so the earliest that you could do it was 18. So a month after I turned 18, I did LifeSpring. And there were lots of people who were 40 and 50 and 60 and 70. And I was one of the youngest people there, but it spoke to me so much about actualizing my life and being present, not only to myself, but to others, and trusting intuition, which is a lot of my spirituality, is trusting intuition and acknowledging that where I am is where I'm supposed to be, even if it doesn't feel comfortable. So I also feel like doing LifeSpring created a situation where I was on a track to be a pretty angry person. I think I was going to be a very angry person, but I found a way to center and a way to release the victim role that I think Catholicism offers, and my situation has offered on top of that. So I was a happier person, a lighter person, and I was on a spiritual journey then. I knew that I needed Catholicism. I got married in the Catholic Church in my first marriage, and I had my daughter baptized, and I kind of was in it, but I came to another Easter when she was young, and they had the same message, and it was very negative, and it was very limiting, and I just knew that it wasn't black and white. The world was not black and white like that. It was quite gray most of the time. So I kind of went on a journey of trying to find where my spiritual home was. All along this time, I had another guide that is probably the most deepest and most important guide in my life, and that's my best friend. Her name is Poppy, and she and I know that we know each other long before this lifetime. And we communicate in ways like you don't need words, and we don't actually need to be next to each other to communicate, but we have that intuition and that understanding that we are beyond these cells that are here right at this moment. And so that also has all along these times of trauma or close to trauma or difficulties has always been sort of an anchor that I knew I had, and that made me more available to others, which is quite the blessing in the world. And I have a sister who's my Irish twin, Natalie, who we actually we grew up in a 3-bedroom house. So there was a girls' room, a boys' room, and a parents' room. So we had bunk beds, but there were 5 girls. So my sister and I shared a bed until our oldest sister went to college. So we fought like cats and dogs as kids. We were not, seeing what would come, but as we got to teenage years and then onward and throughout this time, we are best of friends. And and she's like my mother, reads a lot. And I know that she's been having difficulty lately of reading, but that's a time. But I have always benefited for their immense knowledge and different ways of looking at things. And that's really helped me to trust my own guidance, my inner guidance, that I have all of these different supports around me. And guides that I can go back to and rely on, even if I'm not talking to them. And so I did a women's history class. Like I got my associate's degree in, oh, so the reason why I became a midwife, happy Mother's Day, is I was invited to a birth from one of my LifeSpring friends. They were intending a home birth. And they gave me a book called Spiritual Midwifery to read, which is written by Anna Mae Gaskin, who was there was a farm in Tennessee that was like a commune, and they had and they taught themselves how to do births and have births and attend births there on the farm for those community members. And the book is a how-to, but it also tells birth stories and tells about becoming a midwife and what things might have led people to be birth support people. And and when I read that, I realized that I don't know, I never looked at a pregnant woman the same, and I knew that actually was my plan. That this nun thing wasn't it, but this actually was it, that I felt. So like I was, one of the things that came out of LifeSpring is knowing what already being what you are going to be, like acknowledging that that's already a part of you. And so it felt very much like that, acknowledging that I was already a midwife, and now I needed to do the process of, learning and being with families as they grew. So I was putting myself through college. So I got an associate's degree in nursing from Montgomery College, and I worked for 10 years as a midwife. And I had, and in that time, I was becoming, I was getting my basic bachelor's degree education. So before I could take my bachelor's in nursing courses at Maryland. So I took this two courses that really stood out. One was ethics, and that was just more philosophy and sort of understanding how different people think about how we come to these decisions in life, and maybe even crossroads, and where we go from there, and how it comes to be, whether it's really real or not real. And so I really appreciated that class, but I also took a women's history class. And so you might know that a lot of the American women's history is really based on Quaker women, because in colonial times in Massachusetts, the reason why Quakers were illegal, or one of the reasons, was that they allowed women to speak in church, which was not allowed. That was illegal. So I obviously felt like, oh, there's something to look at, because the belief that all things are equal and a gift and precious is how I was looking at the world. And so I had a friend that I worked with as a nurse at Providence, and she brought me here to Sandy Spring. And I had actually been to Sandy Spring as a teenager. My friend Alice Blackburn grew up in the meeting, and her mother had organized some young friends activities in the evenings, so I'd come to a couple of those. And then her mother passed when we were 16. So we all came to the memorial service for her mom. And I think that was the first time I was in the meeting house. And I was really surprised, right? It wasn't a Catholic ceremony. It was very personal, and it was really shared deeply. And I was really taken by the community's outreach to Alice and her sisters and her father in that memorial meeting. And I thought that was just really beautiful and important, that it was really a community that they were within. And I know that people feel that way in other churches, but I didn't have that experience really of being cared for by a community, a religious community. So that was, so when I came, I had this experience, and it was what Alan Wright says, it's like the mountaintop, but you can't have that every time. But the first few times I came, I had it every time. And I felt spirit, and I of course wanted to respond to every message, but I did not. I was good. But you know how your mind just wants to, oh yeah. But what really struck me in that time was that I realized that when somebody spoke, you kind of could go on many different tangents. But the tangent that I was on, somebody would stand up and talk about that. And they didn't talk about this tangent over here. And I thought, oh, there's something here that we're all connected, that there's an energy and a spirit that's moving amongst us. And I was, I felt so moved, and I felt so at home that this was a place that was answering the spirit in me as being part of the spirit of the whole. So I think that I tried to find the meeting actually before that, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find where it was. It was like, before the days of GPS. So I was really happy that I did come here and find it. And I've, along the way, been surprised about that ongoing spiritual revelation and growing at the meeting. And times when I've felt a bit lost, I come to meeting and I feel like I find my way. I even had a kind of a vision one time of just like going down a path of bushes, and then it just opened up and there was just a path right through the bushes, and whatever somebody said kind of just took me right to where the center where I needed to be. So I have times when it's visual and a lot of times when it's just an energy, internal feeling of connectedness. And then when I met Steve Schumann, and he started going to A Course in Miracles with him, which was, started with Barry Morley and John Ligon here at the meeting. And it was really wonderful. And it was all in line with all those other steps of this journey that I've been on, about an opening, a trusting, and that we're more than this. And actually this is kind of just what we need to do right now in this moment, to be wherever we're going and be as true as we can in these moments. So I think that the trust was a big piece of this spiritual journey for me, trusting my intuition, that also allowed me to trust other people and even a community that wasn't going to be, that I could be open with and vulnerable. And I'm sure I felt that I could be that in other situations. So I've been extremely blessed, I feel, to have found Sandy Spring. And there have been times when I thought maybe I should go to a different meeting because something was tough here, but it never occurred. And I've been to a few other meetings just on other times, but I also appreciate that the Quaker process is what carries forward, and that I don't need to be in this space or in the meeting house to have it. But that it is the community of togetherness. I really appreciate it. I think those were most of my comments, which I know was short, but you know. I think there was this time when I stood up in meeting and I talked about Quaker process. I thought I kind of felt like I was Unitarian pretty much most of my life, and but I really did appreciate the Quaker process, both business and meeting wide. And I'm just I think that part of calling on community is what fosters that for me, or encourages that. And I appreciate also that it's that, as Howard Fullerton had said, it's a living religion, that it's changing, that it's supposed to be you know, growing and shifting as we move forward in time, and that we don't need to necessarily rely on what was done before. That might inform us or help us to be where we need to be or how we need to be at this moment. And I also appreciated this conversation that Sam Garman had while we were on ministry and council about a speech that a person gave at Earlham. And it was sort of talking about this, it could be a conundrum, an issue within Quakers, that some Quakers have the strong belief that being peace is how you're peaceful. And other people feel like you need to do activities to bring peace. And I know that it's both together, that it all works together, but it's having tolerance that is how some people are going to lead their lives, is maybe be active, and some people are going to actually be quiet and be peaceful and hold the space for it. And I hope that we all can do all of it, but that's not necessarily everybody's calling. So I'm just, I'm still growing, and I have grown a lot while I'm here spiritually, and deepening that spiritual sense of more than just trusting my own intuition, but listening and hearing the meeting, you know, the community's intuition. And I think that's what lurking is about, is, you know, just listening. And it's no mistake that for my master's degree, for my dissertation, that I had a proctor who was into qualitative study instead of quantitative study. And that's what we do as Quakers. You just take everything and distill it into some particular points, and then you know what's really happening, and it's much more personal. So I was really appreciative of that also, in kind of bringing that together in this world. I think that's all I have to say. If people have questions. Yes, Jenny.
Good morning, Nora.
Good morning, Jenny.
I gotta go be greeter.
Okay.
I have to go be greeter.
Yes.
So before I leave, I just want to express my gratitude. I walked into meeting in 2000. I immediately started studying Course of Miracles this week. But you've been like a little sister to me. And I remember being in the kitchen, washing dishes with your little daughters. And here we are, grandmothers together. And you taught me Quaker language. You said, Jenny, it's meeting for business, worship with a concern for business. You taught me so much. And I think that's what we do. We show up.
Yes.
But I'm so grateful for the little things and the big things. They shared it with me and all.
I wanted to tell you, Jenny, that today I was thinking, I'm so grateful. And that's how I wanna talk about that gratitude. And you know who came to mind was Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. That's right.
Can you say a little something about your experience with Course in Miracles and how that relates or connects to Quakerism? And I'll just remind friends, please approach the owl when you have a question.
Thank you, George. I first thought of A Course in Miracles as like a 1,000-page book, and I thought, yeah, some people need a book to get there, and I don't, and I'm not really into reading a bunch of words to find my spirituality or my path or my journey. But then I started going, and I did the usual doubter kind of thing. But actually, what we find continually is that when we read A Course in Miracles, it is Quakerism 101. It is, and people are like, oh, I came from a different religion. Well, you guys, you Quakers, you already get it. But it is the idea that there is a spirit among us, that we're all one, that there's no separation, that the separation is what drives the drama and the conflict that we experience either personally, interpersonally, or worldwide. And that this is just this whole experience of us being in these bodies is just what it is, just serving a purpose for this moment. It's not the bigger purpose or way for us to find peace or center or God. And I used to not use the word God because of my Catholic upbringing. I felt like it was something that was used as a weapon. You don't believe in God, or God is going to hurt you, or God's going to get you for doing that bad thing. So at first in meeting, I would replace God with universe when people spoke. And then, I don't know, A Course in Miracles actually helped me embrace using God as the universal spirit. And I feel much more comfortable saying the word and also hearing people speak out of their own truth about God. So A Course in Miracles is what I've just said, but it's in reading it together with people, we also kind of have come into relationship of being around people who also have that sense that we are bigger than this, and that faults and shortcomings are blessings, and can be made. I want to say made right, but I'm not sure that's the exact word, but I'm going to say made right, with love and a forgiveness of ourselves for seeing a shortcoming in someone else, because they're perfect, actually, right now. Thank you, George. Yeah, Jonathan.
Just wondering if you ever found it challenging to enter into a field of your academic study, your medicine study, your scientific study, and all that quantitative stuff that goes into that kind of study. If you found it difficult to integrate that with your sense of spirit and intuition and guiding your life.
Thanks for that question. So before I was a midwife, when I got invited to that birth, I was a bookkeeper. I actually had never had trouble with numbers or study. I mean, I think when I did family studies, I realized I was the person who wouldn't rock the boat. So I would keep society from looking at our family. So it was just, so I had a perfect 3.5 GPA. You know, I wasn't 4.0, and I wasn't failing, and I was just, you know, quiet and settled. So I've actually, and I actually attribute those 2 years in Catholic school of teaching me how to read and study and integrate things. Even though I was young when I was there, you know, when I got to public school, you know, I was way ahead of everybody in public school as far as what I knew and knowing how to study for a test or something like that. So I feel like I had the blessing of those times too, even though it was a challenging time. So it hasn't challenged me, but I do. I feel like I'm able to let go of things that don't ring true to that spiritual sense. I can answer the question, but then I can let go of that information if it doesn't. I mean, I'll just use this example, which isn't really it, but it's kind of like it. So when I was in my preparation for clinical midwifery, I went to school in Kentucky, but we just did distance learning. So I just went there prior to our clinical study. And this one midwife said, well, always carry lipstick with you. And if you get up at 2 in the morning, just put lipstick on and everybody's going to think you're awake, you know? And you know, the spirit of it is okay. But, you know, my feeling is I don't need to put on lipstick, that I need to be awake or be present for the moment. So some of the things that were, you know, analytical and all those things, there are some things that I needed to know and I have integrated. And that's why I was glad I did 10 years of nursing before I became a midwife, because I learned a lot of things. And those are, you know, talking to a doctor or how things work in the system, all of that I know. And I didn't have to learn it and integrate being a midwife. I just kind of opened up to the midwifery, which is what I wanted to be doing. So I still need to do those things. I still need to assess people and, you know, use my brain, but my spirit is always present. And I didn't mention that, but I feel awe at every delivery, good or bad, you know, which, you know, people have different experiences of their births. And the moment I don't is when I know I need to be out of that job, because that moment, and it's not me taking the energy. I see a lot of doctors do that. They deliver babies. I know that it belongs to the family, but this is the family that's having this energetic awe. So I'm always careful for that. But I've always known for a very long time that if I don't feel that, if I'm getting burned out or whatever the phrase might be, if I'm just dulled by it, then I shouldn't be there. I don't think people should be at birth if they can't be witness to the moment.
Question.
Yes.
I was wondering about your experience as clerk of the meeting and how your spirituality informed how you did that, which I thought was wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. But it was such a time, wasn't it, for all of us? So it was something of a different time that no other clerk had needed to do it that way. And I think I was pretty in line with Sam about, yeah, we don't need technology in the meeting house. This is not, you know, that's not meeting for worship, you know, but I was, I knew that that was what was called for, was to bring gathering, even despite it being electronic, you know. And so I actually, while I was clerking, particularly during business meeting, but during meeting for worship, I just had the intention of gathering. And that's where I where I tried to keep my whole focus was just gathering and loving and knowing that we were all trying to figure it out. And I knew that some friends didn't feel connected ever on Zoom, and I just did everything I could to, you know, have us all have as powerful experience as we could, and learning how to do it differently, which was definitely a challenge. So I wasn't sure that I was very effective business-wise, but we didn't have a lot of business, you know, and so, I mean, we had business about the meeting house and when do we open it? And so then I thought, well, this is just perfect that the meeting has somebody who's a healthcare professional working at a, you know, at a university institution where I get all the up-to-date information all the time and could sort of help maybe guide some of those decisions, or have some input of information. So I was honored to be asked, and I felt like as we were going into it before the pandemic started, I had a feeling of like putting on Barney Rubble brakes, you know, like going further. But I trusted that you all were also, you know, loving and lifting me. And I knew that that would happen. And that there were no mistakes, right? There might be things that we could do better or learn from, but there weren't any mistakes. So.
I just wanted to say you were authentic and very comforting.
Thank you, Captain.
We should probably wrap up so that folks can get to 11 a.m. meeting for worship. Thanks, Nora.